but my seat doesn't swivel. My seat don't swivel. It's one of those hard.
It's not rock.
So I'm like doing this. Counter-Strike is just always something, brother. And now, throw to the guy on the right, Scott. The guy on the right is open. Oh, okay, let me throw. Right, that ain't happening in football,
like
right?
It would be helpful.
Pundit.
Coaches are not allowed to communicate with teams at any time during the match. Like the match starts, the coach off, and then it ends. Also, good luck enforcing that, Omega Law, especially in like.
Okay, let's talk about this one. Breaking news today. Again, we had a banger of a show with Hector, and then we're like, oh shit, what are we going to do? And then all of a sudden, a bunch of news started dropping without Hector.
Plenty of stuff.
Oh, excuse me as I cough. So we've been waiting to find out when the next Counter-Strike major was. We had heard May, and we had heard November. And news broke a couple weeks ago that ESL was in line to do the November one and do one in Brazil. I don't think they've officially nodded to that news report saying that is accurate yet, but they haven't not nodded to that. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
But we didn't know where the next one was supposed to be. And then a lot of us were like, well, they're probably not going to do one because they said they might do one. It depended on COVID, yada, yada, yada. We hadn't heard anything. No one had been announced. In the Counter-Strike world, the way it works with our majors is you pitch Valve. You put together a sales deck, and you knock on Valve's door, and you go, hey, we'd like to do your major. And it's a big fancy PowerPoint. Right. I've seen these, and you pitch what you're going to do special. You're going to pitch the cities or the possible cities, all this different stuff. And Valve has an RFP criteria to pitch for their major, right? So oftentimes, and I say this because oftentimes people will be like, Blast should have this major. We Play should. Why doesn't they? They have to apply for it, right? And the big rumor right now is that Blast has yet to pitch for a major. And that's why Blast...
It doesn't make any financial sense.
It is really fucking expensive.
Irrelevant.
And if you're trying to prop up your own brand and your own set of league matches and your own thing, which Blast is doing with Premier, you might not want to divert all the attention of your little machine to this thing that costs a lot of money, gets a lot of hassles, and it might not be worth it yet. So you might not want to do a major, right? So PGL obviously wanted to do a major, and they did the last one, right? They did Stockholm. And they are now geared up to do this one in Antwerp, Belgium, which is don't do a lot of stuff esports-wise in Belgium, and Antwerp, definitely not. But...
there was an esports festival in Antwerp, actually.
Yeah, there's a little bit. I'm just saying, it's just not a big, huge stop,
yeah.
Like a Cologne or a Stockholm or, it's not a usual suspect yet in Europe. Although, when you look geographically at the location of Belgium, for one, but even Antwerp, really centrally located to a ton of core European countries. So in the sense of people hopping on trains and going as fans, very easy to get to this location. So that makes so much sense. It'd be like doing something in the tri-state East Coast area in the sense of how many people are around that area that can very easily get to it. So very, very cool. Now, where it gets a little bone of contention-y is PGL had some hiccups this last major. They had a bunch of audio issues, bunch of technical issues. A lot of it, I believe, can be contributed to the fact they moved venues last minute due to COVID. And they had also just done the Dota International and had maybe a split crew of both people and labor. And maybe bit off too much to chew in that couple months to do both those things for Valve. And I think the move of the Counter-Strike portion probably really screwed a lot of their plans, both aesthetically, what stuff would look like, but crackly audio and shit like that, I don't care. If, like that shit,
You talk about the recent PGL major. Did I get that wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, right. Sorry. I remember I don't want to sort of cut you off, but it's a bit of a casual in the CS scene these days. I remember Blast coming back with a non-major, and everyone was like, this is the shit. This is sick. And then the PGL major happened, and everyone was like, yeah, maybe Blast should have done this. There was like a bunch of tech issues and a bunch of
tons of tech
around
issues.
That event.
And again, stuff that shouldn't happen at PGL, right? Because they have been doing this for quite a while. They've done tons of international related stuff on the Dota side, tons of Dota events. They did, and they also did a Krakow major years ago for Counter-Strike. They don't... PGL doesn't do any regular Counter-Strike, which I think a lot of us found weird. They don't have a circuit. They don't have a cup series. They don't throw one-off weekends.
I mean, is there any fucking room for a circuit?
No, I know, and that's why they don't. I mean, they tried. They did try to fight their way in and walked away, just like Gfinity walked away. They said, fuck it. ECS walked away. Face It walked away. Right? They closed their pro league in favor of putting their weight behind the Flashpoint Pro League, so to speak.
Couldn't break the ESL block.
It couldn't break the block, and now they're all one big happy family. Anyway, so but yeah, it was a shaky major, right? They got a lot of grief when they initially announced their hosts for lack of diversity. They added diversity to it. I always like the PGL guys, so I don't have a whole lot of bad stuff to say about them. When I worked the major for them, I did the interviews for them. What I tweeted this morning is that they at Krakow they had a in the round setup, right? So many of our fucking stages are like rock concert setups where stage is at the fucking far end, right, of your big horseshoe bowl venue. Stage way back there like the rock concert, man. I fucking hate that shit because a huge chunk of your audience is sitting sideways in your venue, right? And your stage is here. So I bought my seat for the venue, and for the next 3 days, I literally have to do this. But my seat doesn't swivel. My seat don't fucking swivel. It's one of those hard fucking...
Hold on. It's not fucking... When you're in a rock concert too, though,
so I'm like doing this, you know? But here's the difference. A rock show lasts for an hour and a half, 2 hours. One esports day lasts for 8 fucking hours. A weekend is like 20 hours of content. Not
so
very
conducive. What do you suggest?
I suggest in the round, right? And we've had it a few times. Krakow was in the round. It's far more logistically challenging because you got to wire everything to the middle, and you don't have a big fancy backdrop. But the way they did it is they used the normal the entrance where the stage would be was their entrance backdrop, and basically the players walked out that main stage down a catwalk onto the island, so to speak. That was much like the Dota setup, the International does, right? Right in the middle, 2 teams facing each other, catty corner, if you will. AR stuff on the stage and stuff on the actual LEDs. Again, more expensive setup because you got to kind of float all your stuff into the middle versus kind of hide it behind a stage. But man, for the audience, everyone's again, it gives you the feel that you're at a sporting event far more because you're looking down on the field versus looking at the rock concert. Always loved it. Love watching it that way, and certainly love being in the events. The second E-League Major was in the round. That was really cool. So I like that. I also like that, and I don't know what the PGL will do for this one, but those events, PGL used the glass booths that they used for the International. I'm a big booth fan because I'm a big competitive integrity fan, right? And I like the big glass booths when they're fairly sound dampening. They're never going to be purely soundproof. But they make a good effort at killing some of the noise, especially the caster stuff. So you can't hear the intel off the casters.
Yes.
So we'll see how that goes. But again, this announcement was not at all received well so far. And again, this happened just this morning. So my due diligence before the show was like, fuck, to what you said. Oh, fuck, why not blast? Oh, God, all these problems. Now, and what people say that saved PGL a lot, like they didn't do a lot of content around it, like B-roll and stuff. They did bring like all the old school casters back. Richard hosted the desk. Thorin was there. Yanko was there. So a lot of the old vibe of, the majors of before was kind of back. Then they had a whole bunch of drama between fucking DDK and Semler and all. Just nonstop stuff.
No. It was Bardolph, not DDK.
I'm sorry. It was not about, Bardolph. DDK was part of it as a victim because he had nothing to do with the drama, but he was the other partner. Yeah, Bardolph and, the not getting to cast and him being public about it. Again, just a whole lot. Counter-Strike, it's just always something, brother. And now...
Me a little bitch!
And now the interesting thing is since that last major, Semler has had an interesting... social media presence
interesting time,
as has Thorin. So it'll be interesting to see who PGL hires back. I saw.
Well, I think it's a test of the theory. I think that Thorin has definitely had that, his pursuit of excellence and the quality of his work would always sort of supersede, I think, people's attempts to sort of discredit him and try and force him out. So. And I don't know if Semler's ever said that much, but it'll be very interesting to see what PGL's stance is on some of the negative press that they have garnered themselves. Some of it deservedly, some of it undeservedly, in my opinion. We might get a rehashing of the whole, similar Thorin position if they're not taken and if they are as well. So
Yep.
I'm expecting more drama from this.
Yeah, I think either way, it will come back up because either people will cheer that they're not on it, or they will cheer that they are. Like both sides will be happy or sad, right? In that sense, because if they're on the cast,
Right.
a whole lot of press is coming their way from the people that aren't happy with what those guys were saying and doing. If they aren't on it, that's probably the safer option. But then you're going to have very large fan bases of those two folks that disagree with that and think they're being punished and it's bullshit.
Well, and
That'll
you
also
would,
speak up.
you have to consider the loss of quality in a broadcast from, obviously, something you like about Thorin, but the guy really is the esports historian. And obviously Selma isn't a very accomplished play-by-play caster. Like, if you think that there are better, like, I would like to see Harry and Hugo and Lorna Scrawny involved in something like this. I think it's time for them to get that
Yep.
call up. And
Yep.
I've never heard them say that they've been blocked by like the older guard, so to speak. But I think that, they've paid their dues, and I would definitely like to see them at an event like this as well. So a good chance for PGL to open the door to them. I'm very curious now about this talent announcement, Scott. You've kind of you've got me thinking.
Yep. And again, Shocks tweeted today. Obviously, famous League of Legends personality, LCS host, but freelancer in her own right, and has done Counter-Strike.
An actual Belgian.
Yeah, actual Belgian. That's, I think, what maybe piqued her interest. But also, she's said for years, huge Counter-Strike fan, love to do more. Freelancer, by the way. She did do 2 Blast events a couple years ago. She did LA and the Brazil event, I think, maybe. Sao Paulo? Was it Sao Paulo, guys, in the control room? Where'd you all go in Brazil? And she loves it, and she's just a seasoned fucking vet. She could host anything about anything and just come off rock starish. So it would be cool to see her get the nod, especially at home. It'll be interesting to see. And the funny thing, like, I'm really torn on Thorin, right? And obviously anyone who knows Counter-Strike and knows us knows that we've had a huge falling out. He thinks I'm the evil second coming of the fucking devil, which is fine.
Sure.
He can think whatever he wants about me. I've said this a couple weeks ago. I might not have liked his antics off air, but when I was hosting desks and I was able to choose who were my analysts, he was always the top of my list, because on camera, on air, whether you have to fill or whether you have to ask a question of that man, he brings it. He brings whatever is required, right? So we had really good desk segments, right? Didn't necessarily enjoy him off camera, and certainly we're in a huge row right now about shit. So be it. But to your point, like, what is the best for the broadcast on air when the cameras are on? Is it a guy like Duncan giving you the info? Does it hurt if he's not there? Is it just helpful if he is there? I don't know. We all have acquired taste of what we like to listen to.
If I'm deciding it, if I have the keys to the city, I'm putting him on the show.
Yep.
I'm putting him on the show.
And that's a decision they'll make. Because they now have to weigh the public perception versus just, budgetary and all these other issues when you're hiring people, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, we'll definitely see. If they pick him, it's going to light up again, right? Similar, maybe not so much, because obviously Thorin took a little bit of stuff and it kept going, right, in the sense of the drama and the comments and the retweets and stuff.
Right. Similar had an unpopular opinion, I think.
Yeah. Similar wasn't screaming "I am esports" facetiously, because obviously Duncan was being a smart ass, right? But
it was facetious. It was just a bit much, and like it was way past the point of people actually understanding what his true meaning was. So it was only really damaging.
Yeah.
And I think it came from definitely a lot of frustration. Duncan probably felt like he was being dogpiled by a lot of people over something that was, to use the words of someone close to the situation, interpreted in the least charitable way possible. My personal opinion was that it was. I don't think it was the least charitable way to interpret it. I think it was a fairly logical way to interpret. If I'm playing Hanlon's Razor, I'm probably interpreting it in the negative light. So borderline kind of stuff here. But my personal take is that if I had the money, I would put both of them on the show, because they are as much Counter-Strike to me as a fan and previous talent who worked on the game as anyone else on that show. And I think a lot of people, Scott, weren't saying that, the original discussion about representation, they weren't saying that those people should not be there. They might be saying that now, but they weren't saying that. They were just saying they'd like to see, obviously, it opened up more. And that's a whole other discussion to have. Counter Strike people, Counter Strike talent. We're always probably going to be. This is very general. Many of them are very receptive to this sort of more progressive approach to how we staff broadcast, but they were going to be the most resistant to this kind of conversation about representation based on just the personality mix that they had. And we saw that sort of play out. And you've seen this same accusation leveled at different broadcasts. Like Frost did it about the LEC. No one on the LEC spoke up at all. They're just, and maybe they also felt they agree, but I would suggest that Riot kept them well under the thumb there. It's been levied at the Overwatch League as well. I didn't really feel strongly about speaking out about it because I didn't really disagree. So, but if you aim it at a top Counter-Strike talent, then there's going to be like pushback there from them for sure. So we'll get that conversation again. There will be, if there's any situation where there aren't a sufficient number of women or is sort of marginalized genders or ethnicities, there will be a conversation about it because that's already been started. And we'll have to sort of see how that goes. Hopefully it can be conducted in as decorous a manner possible, in a way that's actually constructive and good for the game, because people get too caught up on their own ideology sometimes and they just stop caring about the game, and it's just about good counter at the end of the day, Scott. So I have high hopes for the discourse around this,
Yeah, and I think a lot of us that watch our favorite esports every day and we're really deep on it, like who's talking in our ear is sometimes so less important, and that's not a knock on them, right? It's not a knock on Anders if I mute Anders after a while, because I can just watch. I don't necessarily need that other stimulus, but it's not that I don't like him and his casters, right? It's just sometimes you almost feel like you're such an expert that like those guys got it wrong. I'm just gonna mute, right? Just like people that watch sports will mute casters sometimes. Just watch the fucking sport. So, as always, what we hope is that we just get good Counter-Strike, right? Whether who's talking about it in between and who's giving us play-by-play. But it'll be very interesting because, again, a whole hornet's nest. And then a whole other side thing that I don't think anyone knew during this major that they were getting the next major, because Richard said he was done and he's retiring now. That was his last one, because these guys did some shows afterwards and they kind of threw some shit at PGL, like, we saved your fucking major. If it wouldn't have been for us talent, you fuckers, and they were kind of right, because again, they put together the crew that could fill for an hour when needed, right? So I don't know if they also maybe burned a little PGL bridge, right? Because there's always that fine line of like keeping it real with your TO and like not pissing them off too much that they go, fuck that guy, I'm not gonna hire him again. The shit he said about me, So because they were a little like, and I mean, Duncan was a little like that on air. Right, there would be and this was I always tried to talk Duncan off this wall. Can you stop throwing the production company under the bus live on air, please? This fucking thing, I can't hear it. God damn it, it's like, can you just do that off air? We all do that sometimes. Like, Jason, fuck, what?
No, look, it's not very professional. I think we can agree.
But if you're the guys in the truck, you're like, oh, fucking, he's doing it again. And, he had some of those on air where they would call the shit on it. So, again, I think we've beat this one up. We'll see who they hire, and we'll see, hopefully, vast improvement. One of the cool things I do like is they broadcast in 4K now, the PGL events. So if your bandwidth can handle it, if you can watch it in 4K, they do provide it. I think that's awesome.
Lit.
That is awesome. And they were one of the very first to do any sort of augmented reality graphics or any sort of fun shit where we're flying our real camera through fake logos floating in stadiums. So
the AR stuff.
So they're one of the very pushers of that in our scene. So, and again, they did AR stage and stuff in Stockholm. We'll see how it is. But again, I think all eyes are going to be on the talent choices. But we're not done with Counter-Strike. We're not done with it.
No. What do we got here? I think we've got Q&A, right?
Nope. We got one more very, very last minute dropping one. Actually, while we were on the break before the show dropped.
You tried to cue me up for something that's not in the runner show, by the way.
I know. I did. I forget, because we literally just wrote this in. So this gets announced. Valve has So Valve only cares about the majors. When it comes to how the tournament circuit runs, how the world of Counter-Strike, they only really care about these events that they're involved with. They provide prize purse, they provide the sticker stuff that goes into the packages that like players will make money on, teams will make money on, TOs will make money on the in-game stuff, autographs, those kind of things. And for years, there's been a Valve rule set that gets attached to the TO's rule set for how they've decided to run their event. And Valve's chunk of rules always supersedes whatever the TO's been doing all year long. Could be a coaching rule, could be a format, could be all sorts of stuff. But it's always been not so well defined and not so well documented till today. And what Valve has done today is literally drop their supplemental rule book for the world to read about that basically says, on top of the TO stuff, this is the rules every TO has to abide by, and TO and player and tournament organizer. And if any of the two rules conflict, if we've got one rule and a TO has another rule, we're going to talk about it before your rules go public, and we're going to confirm that rule. But here's our rules that you're all basically going to follow, right? And a lot of it is
how interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of it kind of comes out every major in a blog post, and it might be about how we're doing points this year, how we're doing seeding this year, and I think they've basically taken stuff that used to be a series of messages and a series of blog posts and put it in one big thing for everybody to look at and refer to. Again, whether you're a tournament organizer, a team coming to the event, or a player.
This is a formalized embracement of coaches, by the way, here under the team staff restrictions.
Yes, and this is what I wanted to specifically point out, because it actually talks about rights stuff. Like once you play in a major, the teams have to give their rights in perpetuity to Valve, and the players give their likeness in perpetuity. Pretty fucked up word in perpetuity, by the way, Valve. Just want to point that out. But I ain't here to fight that argument. Teams can fight for that. Because, it's an interesting, and maybe it's always been there. Maybe Valve has always made them sign something different. This is what I want to talk about, because we talked about the Valve ruling earlier in how they deal with Counter-Strike coaches and what Valorant is starting to deal with. And this is their new set of rules. They have made this fucking, unless I have misread this is crystal fucking clear. So, two worlds, right? An online event where you're at a venue. An online event where everybody's home and no one's at a venue, and then and that could be qualifications for the RMR system that leads to a major being on LAN. There's a little bit of online play in our major system that leads to RMRs that are online, possibly in the start, that lead to LANs, that then lead to the big LAN, the major itself. Right. So they're clarifying all this because they control the RMR system, which is the points that you gather to get invited or qualified into our majors, right? We have 2 of those a year as of right now. So here's where it gets really, really fucking cut and dry. Aside from, we'll start at the top one. So basically they say only the 5 players and the team's pre-registered coach are permitted anywhere in the competition area. Because again, a team can bring a sports psychologist, a manager, all sorts of other people that aren't really the coach, right?
Yeah.
They often travel with more than 6 people. They often travel with 7 or 8 people total now on these teams. So they clarify who gets to be anywhere where these players are, the competition area, right? One coach. Now this is where it gets really fun, Mitch. Coaches are not permitted, coaches are not to communicate with, i.e. be seen, be heard or felt by the players by any means at any time, with the exception of warm-up, halftime, and tactical timeouts. So that means before the match, halftime of the match, each map, that is, and then timeouts during the maps, right? So that means no more attaboys, no more patting on the shoulders after a good round, no more good guy, let's go. None of this behind a player. The coaches will have to be sat off stage. They'll have to turn, or stand off stage. They'll have to turn to the admin, timeout, walk on stage or walk on during halftime, have that huddle up, or wait. Maybe the huddle up isn't even happening on stage. Maybe the players will leave the stage, go to a huddle up area. They are basically doing all they can to break coaching in Counter-Strike even more, right? No, again, no more pep talky. And when they say or felt by, they literally mean tapping you on the shoulder. Good job, bro. Good job. Good job. Because again, that if I tap you mid-round on the left shoulder, that means I think they're going B. You should readjust your schedule. And again, they are taking any sort of tells, any sort of ticks, any sort of cheating out of the realm of the coach's hands, at least, right? You can come talk at timeouts, halftime, and before the match.
I mean, I didn't even read the last paragraph there. So no coaches for online matches.
And then, where it gets even worse, that second paragraph, no coaching, like stay the fuck away from an online match, basically. You're not anywhere.
I mean, to me, that is what's even bigger about this. Obviously, it's kind of crazy that the coaches can't communicate with players at all in between those like prescribed times. But online, coaches are not allowed to communicate with teams at any time during the match. Like the match starts, the coach fucks off, and then it ends. Also, good luck enforcing that, Omega Law, especially in like larger sort of formats, as we're talking about the same thing with Valorant right now. But it's on one hand, it embraces coaches for events, so they at least admit that coaches exist. Coaches still have a job in Counter-Strike because while they won't be able to do stuff in the match, it's in between the match. So like Valve haven't killed the coach's career. They've just, really limited the impact of coaches during a match, both online and at LAN, but especially online. It's good to finally see them, I guess, come forward and actually, create a stance here, because there's been a lot of speculation around this and going back and forth. But, at least coaches can communicate during tack pauses and timeouts. At least you can call a timeout at a LAN and actually be a coach. But outside of that, like, you've just got to, I mean, it's kind of wild. We don't see this in other, I guess, organized sort of sports, right? I mean, fucking hell, NFL, the coach is always in the quarterback's ear, for example. But again, the coach on the field, all the information that the players see, the coach generally has, outside of it coming from a slightly different perspective, you know what I mean, on the field itself. So that's the big difference between this and traditional sports. So I understand it. You have to be pretty draconic about it online, but I still don't think this is enforceable. So this is all well and good.
Yeah, it's only going to be enforceable at the top tier when those teams you can force them to fire cameras up. But again, on some of these bigger, open's kind of the wrong word, and because our open qualifiers are nowhere near necessarily as big as some of this other stuff we're talking about. But at the beginning of the RMR process, how do you regulate that those kids aren't going to text each other, right? Once they get into the RMRs that are the final qualifications on LAN, your other rules kick into place, and you're literally physically in front of everybody, easy peasy to keep an eye on the coach. But again, back to the point of Riot's got to at least start with setting fucking rules. Whether you can really enforce them all, and obviously Valve has gone to the extreme. Here you go. It's like, stay the fuck away from online, and at events, it's very structured. And again, we started the show, so I haven't seen Counter-Strike Reddit or seen any of the private channels to see if any coaches are blowing up or pissed or want to do anything about this, because I think they've seen for quite a while the livelihood of their career just get potentially limited in the sense of how they can actively help. Now, you're right; they're not losing jobs. Teams are not going coachless in Counter-Strike. That would be asinine. So there's still a coaching slot at every T1 team, right? But Valve really doesn't want it to be a 6-man game, and they're just doing all they can to do whatever input, And it's weird to because you can put two hats on, right? You can go, I get that. I want it to be just like the 5 kids that play with their buddies, and that's the fair thing, But man, if those 5, because I've had this debate for years, right? And even with in-game leaders, right? If those 5 players actually were led by a 6th person, how much better would the Counter-Strike be, right? How would we reach a different level if you had if fucking Zonic was master chess moving 5 superstars? And that, because the in-game leader always gets a little bit of slack because he's also got a call. So he's not usually your top fragger. He's not your top guy at anything, right? But what if that didn't matter? What if it, I don't know what that Counter-Strike would look like. But that's the other debate is like, what if you could have a coach and he was moving chess pieces? Would it be better chess? Would it be higher level chess? I don't know. You know?
I mean, in theory, you have more information aggregated. So yes, because essentially, teams rely on 5 individuals being able to convey information accurately to one individual IGL that makes a decision. But that decision making is also very much clouded by their perspective. So in theory, you probably have. I mean, what's better though? Better for the how do we
Right.
what metric do we judge
Yep.
better Counter-Strike on? Closer games, higher kill. I don't even think it's relevant because we don't really have a way to judge how that would be better.
Yeah, I was
It
thinking the
wouldn't
skill
necessarily
level
make
would
bad
raise
teams better
universally
because it would.
because you had 5 better fraggers, 5 better pure
I would
players.
suggest it would be more volatile, Scott, because it would hinge on the individual much more. Right, Counter-Strike's a team game where individuals can still shine for sure, but you put a coach in the puppeteer position. I think Counter-Strike becomes more volatile. Teams become less consistent because it really hinges on one person.
Sure.
And really, if in a team, if you're having a bad day, maybe Nico over there pushing the B site can sort of step up in your absence. But when it's just one person, then it's possible at least that there's more volatility.
Yeah. And what a lot of the in-game leaders have told me when I've asked them, because, even when they put on the pro side hat and go, oh, yeah, if we were all just rock solid fraggers, I could see that it would be more engaging Counter-Strike. But what they often said is that what you're trying to replace something that can't be replaced. And I'm going to pretend I'm the in-game leader. Scott, I'm calling strats based on the vibe and the feel of me being in that server, in that game, running around, shooting, actively involved in the match, helps me figure out what the fuck we're doing. So just someone standing behind us seeing everything won't necessarily put that all together as quickly and be able to call as quick. You go on gut, you go on instinct, and part of that is like how you're doing in the game, so to speak. And I'm like, yeah, but take that all away. You're just playing now, and they still seem to think that someone in the server during the match brings a level of knowledge and talk that the outside guy, even if it's a Zonic, doesn't get because he's just walking back and forth watching 6, right?
I would
watching
suggest
5.
that perspective comes from a player trying to avoid redundancy at all costs.
And that's what I said. I'm like, dude, you're just trying to keep a job here, right?
There's a vested interest in saying that. Yeah.
I mean, I understood the nuance of it, but at the end of the day, after a while, what is that vibe you're trying to describe to me? What is that feel that the guy can't bring?
Yeah, I mean,
from
it's very
behind?
easy to deal in intangibles if you're trying to make something really hard to objectively lay out. So that might even be true, but you can't have like a discussion with someone who's talking about feelings and how the feel of something with
I'm feeling how Navi's playing against us right now. I'm feeling it. Okay. Now I think you're just feeling you're trying to cover your job is what you're feeling with me.
Maybe. I'm not saying that they are, but I'm just saying it's inadequate to actually describe like the pros and cons of this because there's too much of a stake in it for the player.
And chat brings up a point because you brought up sports and how some sports you can talk, like basketball, you can talk nonstop. The coach can be screaming as long as he stays where he's allowed to stay on the court, the coach can be screaming constantly onto a basketball court. Football players, the captain is mic'd up, right? Or I should say has an earpiece. Usually the quarterback on offense and whoever on defense, right? That gets cut off before the snap. So they're allowed to have a little intel and call play, hey, run, bravo, white leg, 265er. But it's not like I'm dropping back, throw to the guy on the right, Scott, the guy on the right is open. Oh, shit, okay, let me throw. Right, that ain't happening in football,
like
right?
It would be helpful.
That would be incredibly helpful because, again, in football, there's a guy way up in the fucking stands with binoculars going, oh, shit, oh, yeah, throw to that guy, right? Could you imagine? Woo!
Yeah.
I love that I could stand up on our stage.
Yeah, maybe it would. I don't know. It's I don't know how helpful that would be, but
earpiece turned off 15
that
seconds
is why
left.
they switched it off.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Again,
right.
let the guys on the field play the game, I guess, in that regard. But pretty funny, though. If the guy up in the booth could call the fucking receivers that were open, we'd have a totally different game. Holy shit. All right.
StarCraft with people.
Yeah, right? Oh, that would be fucking crazy.